Salone and Croesus. Salone was a philosopher, a statesman, and known as the wisest man in the entire world. Now, he left his affairs in order back in Athens and went to travel the world for 10 years to learn about many different things. And he arrived at the kingdom of Lydia. Now, at the time, the king of Lydia, King Croesus, was the richest king in all of the world. And when King Croesus heard that Salone, the wisest man in the world, was here, he thought, well, I would like to meet him, and I'm sure he would like to meet me. He invited Salone in for dinner, and first showed him all his treasures and his jewels and his magnificent palace and his fine silks. And finally, during dinner, King Croesus said, Salone, you who have traveled all over the world and seen so many things, tell me, who do you believe has been the happiest man you have ever encountered? Salone thought about it carefully for a moment, and finally he said, Your Majesty, I believe it would be Tellus of Athens. King Croesus was quite surprised. You see, he had been expecting Salone to say, Why, you, Your Majesty, of course! Who could be happier than you with all these magnificent things? But Tellus of Athens? The king had never heard of Tellus of Athens. And who was this Tellus of Athens? Oh, he was a fine man. I met him a few years ago. You see, he had many children. His sons were fine, honorable people, and they had many children of their own, and he lived to see them prosper and flourish and grow. And then, when he was old, he was called back to battle to defend his people, and he died gloriously on the battlefield, fighting for freedom. They won that battle, and the people around him acclaimed him as a hero and gave him the funeral of a hero and a great man. The king heard this and said, So he's dead? Well, yes, of course, said Salone. All right, then, said King Croesus. Who's the second happiest man that you have encountered? Once again, Salone thought about it carefully for a while, and finally he said, Biton and Clovis of Argos, the two twins. Yes, they were wonderful, magnificent young men, and they loved their mother so much, and when they died in the temple, they were... Again, said the king, but I never heard of these people. They're just random, normal people. Well, yes, said Salone. But that's impossible. What about me? What about all of my wealth? Why can't you say that I'm the happiest person you've encountered? Well, said Salone, perhaps you are happy now, Your Majesty, but I can't say that you are the happiest, because who knows what your life will hold in the future? All of this, it could pass at any moment. We never know what the future holds. We cannot say that someone has been happy throughout their lives until their life is over, and until they have died well and gloriously and beloved by their family and their people. Fine, said the king, and he stopped listening to Salone, and he kept on eating sullenly. His pride was hurt, you see. And he thought that perhaps Salone wasn't that wise after all. Well, Salone left and continued on his travels, and King Croesus continued ruling his kingdom and becoming more and more wealthy. So wealthy, in fact, that other kings became jealous. And one of these was King Cyrus of Persia. And King Cyrus, even though he was not as wealthy as King Croesus, while King Croesus spent all of his money in luxuries and living well, King Cyrus spent most of his money on the army. And one night, the entire Persian army descended upon the kingdom of Lydia, and they took the kingdom over. They burned the palace down. They took King Croesus hostage. They pulled out his eyes, and they tied him to a stake in the center of the plaza to burn him alive. Now, as King Croesus was tied there to the stake, miserable, he remembered what Salone had told him all those years before, and he realized that Salone was right. Yes, he had been happy at a time, but now all of that was gone, and now he was going to die in pain and alone. And he started crying out as he felt the heat of the torches getting closer. Salone, Salone, Salone. Now King Cyrus was there, of course, presiding over the execution, and he heard King Croesus crying out the name of Salone. "Stop!" he said to the people who were bringing the torches. "Croesus, why are you calling out the name of Salone? I know Salone, of course. He is the wisest man in the world. I admire him greatly. Why are you calling out his name as you are about to die?" "Oh, because he was right," said the king. "All of my glory and my wealth and my happiness was gone in an instant. I've lost everything. I never thought that what I had I could lose, but I can. And I regret now. I regret not having lived better, not having appreciated the people I had around me, because now I am dying alone, and I have nothing that I thought brought me joy." Now when King Cyrus heard this, suddenly he looked around at his army and his power and his wealth, his crown. "Huh," he said. "Untie him. Bring him here." King Cyrus realized that all what he had could also be lost in an instant. He realized that what really mattered was the people that were around him. He did not make Croesus die that day. Instead, he brought him to the palace and let him live there. And Cyrus, in the end, as many kings, he forgot sometimes. But the story was told, the story of Salone, the story that this too can pass.